60 Minutes had this year-long investigation into Benghazi, and they ran this report a while back. They had hyped the report endlessly, and one of their star witnesses in the report was a British security officer named Dylan Davies. And he told this heroic tale of, busting in to help people and hitting an Al-Qaeda operative with the butt of his gun, etc., etc. It's like your classic G.I. Joe come to save the day type story.
In 2013, 60 Minutes aired a story that destroyed their reputation overnight. The Benghazi report seemed like another big scoop, but within days, everything fell apart. The main source had lied about crucial details. Worse yet, he was writing a book for a CBS-owned publisher. Conflict of interest accusations flew. The reporter and producer disappeared on leave. CBS was forced to make a humiliating public apology. But this scandal was just the tip of the iceberg. The real reasons why America's most trusted news show almost got canceled run much deeper than anyone knows. In 1967, Don Hewitt came up with an idea that would change television forever. He wanted a program that could go deeper than the 2-minute evening news segments, but didn't need the commitment of an hour-long documentary. For him, it was also personal. Just 3 years earlier, he had been fired as producer of the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite after clashing with CBS News president Fred Friendly. Hewitt was sent to the network's little-respected documentary division, a move many saw as a dead end. Pitching 60 Minutes was his way back. Bill Leonard, vice president for news programming, believed in the idea. Richard Salant, president of the news division, did not. Salant thought it would soften the hard edge of serious journalism. After weeks of pushback, he reluctantly agreed. That decision would launch one of the most influential programs in television history. Hewitt didn't just create another news show, he redefined the look and feel of TV journalism. The ticking stopwatch, which became the show's signature, wasn't just decoration. It was there to remind viewers of pace, urgency, and precision. In the original set, Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner sat on opposite sides of a cream-colored studio, a setup later replaced with the now famous black background. Hewitt decided that correspondents would never share the screen, making each segment feel like a one-on-one conversation with the viewer. The magazine-style backdrops behind each reporter mirrored print layouts. Chroma key technology highlighted key topics. Every design choice was deliberate, aiming to keep viewers engaged in stories told through personalities, rather than an impersonal anchor desk. Hewitt's career had already been filled with firsts. He directed Edward R. Murrow's See It Now in the 1950s, including the first coast-to-coast live television hookup in November 1951, showing both the Brooklyn and Golden Gate bridges at the same time. In 1960, at just 38, he produced and directed the first televised presidential debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Hewitt later joked that Kennedy won because he looked healthy and confident, while Nixon appeared pale and tired. He also introduced innovations like cue cards, on-screen captions, and smoother editing systems, and even coined the term anchor man. His philosophy was that television should mix serious investigative work with human interest stories to keep people watching. By the time he pitched 60 Minutes, he had a clear sense of how to make that balance work. When 60 Minutes debuted on September 24, 1968, it was unlike anything else on TV. Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner alternated as correspondents, speaking from opposite sides of the studio. There was no anchor behind a desk, no formal news reading, just stories told in depth, in a style that felt intimate. Ratings at first were underwhelming, and many CBS executives weren't sure primetime was the right place for investigative journalism. But the network stayed with it. Over time, the show would become television's longest-running primetime series, winning more Emmy Awards than any other. In 1972, the show landed in the Sunday 6:00 p.m. slot, but this created a new problem. NFL games often ran late, cutting into or wiping out the program entirely. From 1972 to 1975, 60 Minutes went on hiatus during the football season, airing only in the summer. Ironically, the NFL would later become its best lead-in, delivering huge audiences once the show returned to Sundays year-round. The scheduling mess was made worse by a CBS technicians' strike that year, which disrupted both football coverage and news broadcasts. It was a reminder that sports and news often competed for time and attention in unpredictable ways. The visual style of 60 Minutes kept evolving. The shift from a light cream set to a deep black background gave the program a more serious tone, focusing attention entirely on the reporters and their subjects. The stopwatch and its ticking sound became instantly recognizable. Producers also changed how interviews were filmed, allowing correspondents to move around rather than sit still in a static frame. These choices influenced countless other programs, setting a standard for what serious television journalism should look like. The decision to keep correspondents separate on screen also shaped the show's identity. Mike Wallace was known for his direct, often confrontational questioning, while Morley Safer was calm and analytical. Viewers got to know each journalist's style and often followed their stories over multiple years. This personal connection helped keep audiences loyal even when the cast changed. Between 1968 and 1975, CBS moved 60 Minutes through 7 different time slots, trying to find the right place for it. The show began as a bi-weekly program, jumped between weekdays, and then settled into Sundays. The Federal Communications Commission's 1971 primetime access rule opened up new scheduling opportunities, but the NFL conflicts kept causing problems. In December 1975, CBS made a move that changed television history. On December 7th, the network shifted 60 Minutes to Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It wasn't a random choice. The FCC had just amended the access rule, handing that slot back to networks, but only for news or family shows. CBS first tried a family drama called 3 for the Road, but 40 of the top 50 affiliates rejected it. The show was canceled in November, and executive Oscar Katz decided to fill the hour with 60 Minutes. The change worked instantly. By the 1976-77 season, 60 Minutes broke into the Nielsen Top 20 for the first time, landing at 18th with a 21.9 rating. That ended 7 years of low ratings and constant shuffling. The show had been moved around 7 times since 1966. The new time slot, paired with Dan Rather joining the team in 1975, turned 60 Minutes into a cultural force. It was the rare documentary-style news program that became must-see television. From 1977 to 2000, it pulled off something no other show has ever done: 23 straight seasons in the Nielsen Top 10. Sunday evenings became a ritual in American homes, with families gathering for its investigative stories. Advertisers quickly noticed. The price for a 30-second spot jumped from $17,000 in 1975 to $175,000 in 1982, a 10-fold leap in just 7 years. The show kept its audience beyond that streak, making the top 20 almost every season since 1976-77. And in the 2024-25 season, it still averaged 8.32 million viewers, holding the title of America's #1 news program for the 51st consecutive year. It didn't just stay popular, it hit #1 in the annual Nielsen ratings 5 times, a record shared only with All in the Family and The Cosby Show. Its first victory came in the 1979-80 season, beating huge hits like Three's Company, That's Incredible, and MASH. That was the first time a hard news magazine ever topped primetime television. It happened again in 1991-92, 1992-93, and 1993-94, with ratings around 20. American Idol would later beat its record with 8 straight #1 seasons, but 60 Minutes' achievement was unique because it was winning against light entertainment with serious journalism. The 1979-80 season was especially defining. Starting in September and ending in April, it gave CBS an overall network victory with a 19.6 Nielsen rating. That year, 60 Minutes led a top 10 list filled with CBS shows, proving that Sunday at 7 had become the most powerful hour in television. Part of the magic was the way it redefined news. Unlike other programs, it aired 52 weeks a year, keeping audiences hooked with long-form investigative pieces. It used bold methods, hidden cameras, surprise visits, and re-edited interviews that became industry standards. Dan Rather's arrival alongside Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner created a star reporter system that built strong connections with viewers. Its simple 3-story format, with no flashy graphics and no reporters sharing the screen, gave the audience a sense of intimacy. Don Hewitt's vision mixed hard-hitting investigative work with engaging personality profiles, making the show both serious and entertaining. In November 1995, CBS executives made a decision that stunned the newsroom. They stopped 60 Minutes from airing an interview that producer Lowell Bergman had spent 18 months securing. The guest was Jeffrey Wigand, former director of research at Brown and Williamson, who earned $300,000 a year before being fired on March 24, 1993. His crime, according to him, was refusing to accept the company's use of additives like coumarin, a known carcinogen. CBS lawyers warned that airing the interview could spark a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit for helping him break his confidentiality agreement. At the same time, CBS was being sold to Westinghouse, and no one wanted a legal battle that might damage the deal. The fear of corporate risk outweighed the duty to inform the public, leaving the investigative team powerless. When Wigand finally sat down with Mike Wallace in August 1995, he delivered a line that cut through decades of tobacco industry denials. "We're a nicotine delivery business, and that's what cigarettes are for. Most certainly, it's a delivery device for nicotine." This wasn't just an opinion. It clashed directly with the sworn testimony of 7 tobacco CEOs who had told Congress on April 14, 1994, that nicotine was not addictive. Wigand said Brown and Williamson deliberately boosted nicotine's effect by adding chemicals like ammonia to tobacco blends. He had been hired to make cigarettes safer, but instead found himself in a company that hid health risks while making products more addictive. His story shattered the image the industry had worked so hard to protect. The turning point came on January 26, 1996. The Wall Street Journal published a front-page article revealing Wigand's confidential deposition from a Mississippi lawsuit against 13 tobacco companies. The details were now public, and CBS could no longer justify keeping the interview locked away. That same night, CBS Evening News aired excerpts. 9 days later, on February 4th, 60 Minutes broadcast the full 2-part interview. It was the same conversation that had been silenced for months, now impossible to ignore. Looking back, Jeff Fager, who was then executive producer of CBS Evening News, called it a low point in our history. He believed it was probably the most important story 60 Minutes had ever reported, yet it was handled poorly because of corporate interference. He made it clear the fault was not with the journalists, but with the pressure from CBS's corporate leadership, which feared litigation during the Westinghouse takeover. Years later, he said the network no longer operated that way, but the damage to its reputation at the time was undeniable. In 1999, Michael Mann brought the story to the big screen in The Insider, starring Russell Crowe as Wigand and Al Pacino as Bergman. The film was based on Marie Brenner's Vanity Fair article, "The Man Who Knew Too Much." and earned 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Crow. It portrayed the lengths Brown and Williamson went to in order to discredit Wigand, including a 500-page dossier from Investigative Group International and chilling threats to his children in April 1994. The movie became a teaching tool for journalism and film students, showing how corporate power can silence even the strongest newsrooms. The bond between NFL games and 60 Minutes was both a blessing and a headache for CBS. Every Sunday, the network often delayed its evening schedule by 30 to 50 minutes to fit in the end of NFL games. Sometimes this meant that reruns of shows would begin mid-episode, frustrating viewers. Yet the very thing that caused this chaos could also supercharge ratings. In one case, a 61-minute NFL overrun that drew 29.11 million viewers led directly into 60 Minutes, giving it a 21.3% jump to 10.197 million viewers. The most striking example was when an episode featuring a Trump interview followed an NFL game and pulled in 17 million viewers, even beating the NFL and World Series that same night. Still, the unpredictability was such a problem in the DVR era that CBS had to start warning audiences on Twitter and Facebook when 60 Minutes would be delayed. It was ironic. The same overruns that could ruin a night's schedule also helped turn the show into a must-watch. Over the years, 60 Minutes mastered the art of turning political interviews into national events. When Barack and Michelle Obama sat down for their first post-election interview in November 2008, 24.5 million people tuned in. That number became a benchmark for the show's ability to grab attention during historic moments. 10 years later, in March 2018, the Stormy Daniels interview brought in the biggest audience since the Obamas. Then, in October 2020, Donald Trump's walk-off interview drew 17 million viewers, outperforming the NFL, the World Series, and everything else on television that night. Even when airing after NFL overruns, the interview managed a 2.4 rating among adults 18 to 49 and reached 15.6 million viewers. These moments proved that, in times of political drama, a traditional news program could still pull audiences away from even the biggest sporting events. One of the most defining moments for the program came in 1996 with the Jeffrey Wigand story. Wigand, a former Brown and Williamson scientist, revealed that cigarette companies knowingly made their products more addictive and dangerous. The two-part investigation was so impactful that it inspired the movie The Insider. Behind the scenes, it also forced CBS to rethink how it handled high-risk stories. New, more cautious vetting procedures were introduced, adding extra layers of legal review before a controversial piece could air. This more guarded approach became part of the show's DNA. Years later, the lack of proper vetting in Lara Logan's flawed Benghazi report showed how easily credibility could be damaged when those safeguards were not followed. The show's style also sparked debate. By placing correspondents at the center of their stories, often in tight close-ups, 60 Minutes created a feeling of intimacy that made viewers feel connected. But this approach sometimes blurred the line between journalism and personality. Lara Logan's career became the clearest example of the risk. Once respected as a serious foreign correspondent, she later embraced conspiracy theories and inflammatory rhetoric, shocking colleagues. After the Benghazi controversy in 2013, she took an indefinite leave, her credibility in ruins. For critics, her downfall was proof that making reporters into central characters could backfire, turning them into celebrities who might overshadow the journalism itself. Despite these controversies and a national decline in trust in the media, 60 Minutes has stayed on top. Polls show only 31% of Americans trust the media to report fully and fairly, with 36% having no trust at all. Nearly 60% say they have stopped using news sources they believe are biased. Yet the program remains the most watched news magazine and consistently ranks in television's top 20. Even in its 55th season, the premiere featuring President Biden reached 10,197 million viewers, finishing 5th among all primetime shows. It has weathered scandals, shifting audience habits, and a changing media landscape by relying on its reputation, its distinctive format, and its ability to create television moments people feel they have to see. For more than half a century, 60 Minutes managed to do something almost no other television program has ever achieved. It stayed near the top of the ratings for 5 decades, barely missing the top 20 in only 3 years between 2005 and 2008. Starting in the 1976-77 season, it held its place through wars, political changes, and shifts in how people watched television. From 1977 to 2000, it remained in the top 10 for 23 years in a row. In 5 of those seasons, it was the #1 show in America, matching the peak runs of some of the most beloved sitcoms. This level of success was especially surprising for a hard news program competing with entertainment shows, proving that serious journalism could also be a ratings powerhouse. The recognition it received was just as extraordinary. TV Guide placed it at number 6 on its list of the 50 greatest shows of all time in 2002, then at number 24 on a similar list in 2013. Variety ranked it 20th on its 2023 list of best television shows ever. The New York Times described it as one of the most respected news magazines in American television. This kind of critical praise was rare for news programming, which usually struggled to hold audiences. 60 Minutes managed to be both a cultural landmark and a commercial success, turning a format that once seemed slow into a must-watch event. In 2024, it reached an unmatched milestone: 50 consecutive seasons as America's #1 news show. No other program had ever held the top spot in its category for that long. In its 56th season alone, it reached over 100 million viewers and averaged 8.35 million each week. During that same season, 1 in 3 Americans watched at least once, whether on traditional TV or streaming. It was in the top 10 for 27 out of its 28 episodes that year, and ranked as the #1 non-sports primetime program 15 times. These numbers are staggering in a time when audiences are split across hundreds of channels and platforms. Part of its staying power came from a unique advantage. Its Sunday 7 p.m. slot often followed NFL games on CBS, and when those games ran long, the show enjoyed huge audience spikes. In October 2013, a Broncos-Cowboys game delayed the show by 44 minutes, and 60 Minutes held on to 63% of the football audience, 17.94 million viewers. Just 2 months later, another Broncos game against the Chiefs pushed the show back by 50 minutes, and it still kept 66% of the 28.11 million football viewers. These moments turned it into a sudden destination for tens of millions, giving it a rare mix of regular and event-driven viewership. From the start, its format was as distinctive as its success. Created in 1968 by Don Hewitt and Bill Leonard, the program built its stories around individual correspondents instead of a shared anchor desk. Each journalist worked alone on their segment, becoming the face and voice of their investigation. Early on, Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner set the tone, sitting apart on a minimalist set and using techniques that would become standard, like re-edited interviews, hidden cameras, and surprise confrontations. The stopwatch that still appears between segments became an icon of the show. Over time, this style influenced investigative journalism worldwide, with similar programs appearing in Australia and Canada in the 1970s. The current lineup, Leslie Stahl, Scott Pelley, and Bill Whitaker, continues to carry the same approach: proving that the formula still works more than 50 years later. By June 2017, 60 Minutes had earned 138 Emmy Awards, more than any other American primetime program. It also collected 25 Peabody Awards, including a major institutional honor in 2018. Many of its most celebrated segments exposed stories like CIA involvement in cocaine smuggling and the growing national opioid crisis. Its influence reached far beyond the United States, inspiring similar news magazine programs in countries around the world. Don Hewitt's 1968 format of a magazine for television became the model for countless broadcasters, though none matched its longevity or cultural impact. In journalism schools, 60 Minutes remains a case study in investigative excellence, with its reporting methods taught as the gold standard. Don Hewitt, the show's creator, changed television news in ways that are still felt today. He introduced the term anchor, brought in the teleprompter, and used on-screen captions to make information easier to follow. He directed the first televised presidential debate between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon, setting the tone for all that came after. His idea was to blend the storytelling style of Life magazine with television, rejecting the overly stiff tone of traditional documentaries. Hewitt developed new filming angles, refined cue card systems, and helped create the concept of celebrity journalists, whose faces became as familiar to viewers as their own family members. These changes shaped not just 60 Minutes, but the way all TV news is produced. The program also proved that hard news could be primetime entertainment. It became the first news show to break into Nielsen's top 10 and stayed there for 23 consecutive seasons. By 1979, it was the #1 program on television, a spot few thought a news show could ever reach. This success brought massive profits to CBS. A 30-second ad on the show jumped from $17,000 in 1975 to $175,000 in 1982, and over the years, it generated an estimated $2 billion in revenue. Once CBS locked it into the 7 p.m. Sunday slot in December 1975, it became the longest-running primetime program in a single weekly time slot in U.S. television history. Its biggest episodes have drawn audiences as large as major sports events. The Obama family's first post-election interview in November 2008 pulled in 24.5 million viewers. 10 years later, Anderson Cooper's interview with Stormy Daniels in March 2018 attracted 22.1 million, more than twice the usual audience. That episode rode a wave of public interest and got an extra boost from a late-running NCAA basketball game. Even today, 60 Minutes averages more than 10 million viewers, well above morning network news shows and the most-watched cable programs, proving its relevance in a crowded media world. But with influence has come controversy. The 2013 Benghazi report collapse became a major embarrassment after it was revealed that a key source's story conflicted with what he told the FBI. The fact that he was writing a book for a CBS-owned publisher fueled conflict of interest concerns. Reporter Lara Logan and a producer took leaves of absence, and CBS admitted its vetting process failed. In 2024, the show faced heavy political pressure when President Trump sued CBS for $20 billion, claiming a Kamala Harris interview had been deceptively edited. The lawsuit led to the resignation of longtime executive producer Bill Owens. Allegations of sexual misconduct also tarnished its history. Investigations found CBS had paid more than $5 million to settle assault claims against Hewitt, and similar allegations surfaced against his successor, Jeff Fager. These incidents have become cautionary lessons in journalism programs, showing the delicate balance between editorial independence, public trust, and corporate responsibility.